Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Patrick Fleming, a Program Officer in the Division of Education Programs. I'm here with my colleagues Molly Hardy from the Division of Preservation and Access and Mary Macklem from the Division of Research Programs. This presentation is designed to introduce you to the National Endowment for the Humanities and to some of the grant opportunities we have available for you. Here is a quick rundown of what we'll cover today. I will start by giving a quick introduction to the NEH. Then we will share some recent initiatives involving HBCUs and provide an overview of the grants we offer. We'll share some examples of successful grants, and we'll end by showing you where you can learn more and how to apply for these awards. You can pose questions in the Q&A box at any time. Your question might be answered right away, or if it's something we think would benefit the whole group, we'll save it for the Q&A period at the end. And if you would like to turn on the closed captioning, you can do so with the CC button at the bottom right of your screen. I also want to alert you to some links that we've placed in the chat. They provide further information on some of what we'll mention today. The first link is to the virtual grants workshop page, and there you will also find some handouts that we prepared for you. If you scroll down to today's meeting, you'll see a grant contact list, which explains a brief explanation of some of our grant programs, and you'll also find a list of upcoming deadlines and some tips for writing your application. So let's get started. The National Endowment for the Humanities is a federal agency founded in 1965 to support all areas of the humanities through project-based grants and fellowships using merit-based peer review. Some important parts of this definition. First, as a federal agency, the NEH uses taxpayer money and has a responsibility to make sure that that money is spent wisely. We support projects and activities of national impact in all U.S. states and territories. As a federal agency, we also support the humanities at the state level. As mandated by Congress, 40% of the agency's budget supports the state and jurisdictional humanities councils. These councils increase public awareness of, access to, and support for the humanities all across the United States. They play a critical role in supporting the NEH's mission and goals at a local grassroots level. So in addition to the grant programs we'll talk about today, I encourage you to see what opportunities your state or jurisdictional council has as well. All of our grant making is project-based. That means you need to define what you want to do. Some grants are for large projects, others are for smaller ones. But all the grants are evaluated based on the project itself, rather than the reputation of the applicant, either the individual or the institution. You must prove yourself anew with each application. And we use merit-based peer review to evaluate all applications. Peer review is the heart of our process. NEH tries to make that process as transparent as possible. We publish review criteria for each grant, and we ensure that reviewers stick to those criteria in their evaluations. In the chat, you'll see a link to a page explaining the review process in detail. We do maintain reviewers' and applicants' privacy, but all applicants are entitled to feedback. So whether or not your application is funded, we encourage you to ask for reviewers' comments. It's quite common for an application not to be successful the first time, but to be awarded on the second or third try. And many applicants find reviewers' feedback useful when revising their application. We're also always looking for experts to serve on our review panels. If you would like to be a panelist, you can sign up using the link posted in the chat. Finally, the NEH makes grants in all areas of the humanities and welcomes inter- or multidisciplinary work. Activities are addressed to different audiences, from the general public to school children and scholars. And NEH grants go to nonprofit institutions such as museums and archives, libraries, colleges and universities, public television and radio stations, and individual scholars. Different groups might be eligible for different grants, but all the projects are based in the humanities. We don't support the creative arts, that's the NEA, and we don't support humanitarian work. But with those caveats, we work with a wide definition of the humanities. The NEH founding legislation defines the humanities as including, but not limited to, the study and interpretation of languages, both modern and classical, linguistics, literature, history, jurisprudence, philosophy, archaeology, comparative religion, ethics, and the history, criticism, and theory of the arts. We also support projects in fields like anthropology and sociology, so long as they employ humanistic methods. So really, if you can make a case that your project is in the humanities, we encourage you to apply. And as we will be emphasizing throughout our presentation, you can always talk to a program officer if you have questions. In fact, if you remember just two things from today's presentation, I hope they are these. The first is that while NEH grants are competitive, one thing all awardees have in common is that they submitted an application. We fund applications from every state and all kinds of institutions that you do have to apply to be considered. Second is that program officers are here to help. Most of us are also humanities scholars, many of us are former professors. We know the impact that grant support can have, and also how daunting the application process can seem. The grants contact list we've provided can help you select the program officer most knowledgeable about the particular award you're interested in, and we want you to contact us. For most programs, we can even read a complete draft of your application before you submit it. We publish a draft deadline, which is usually a few weeks before the application deadline. And we're always happy to hear your ideas and help you find the grant program that's right for you. Even if you're just formulating an idea, please reach out to us and we're happy to speak with you. So that's who we are as an agency, and we really are here for you. We exist to support the humanities through grants to individuals and to institutions. And now I'll turn things over to Molly, who will explain some of our recent initiatives and some of the awards we offer.
Great, thank you so much, Patrick. This is Molly Hardy speaking now, and I'm going to discuss some specific partnerships NEH has had with HBCUs, as well as to begin to discuss specific grant programs. NEH has a long history of working with HBCUs. The agency is one of more than 30 federal agencies which form part of the White House initiative on HBCU's Interagency Working Group. Together with other agencies, NEH has taken part in the National HBCU Week Conference over the last several years and worked together on advancing goals of the agency and the initiative. NEH has 2 grant programs designed specifically for HBCUs, along with many others that offer special encouragements to HBCUs, and we encourage you to explore our full range of grant programs. First, the HBCU Cultural Heritage Stewardship Initiative was launched last year by the National Trust's African American Cultural Heritage Action Fund with $500,000 in support from the NEH. The program provides HBCUs with resources to protect, preserve, and leverage their historic campuses, buildings, and landscapes, ensuring these symbols of African American excellence and achievement are preserved to inspire and educate future generations. The 8 selected HBCUs for this initial round of funding will develop plans that are intended to guide the grantees as they define preservation solutions to existing architectural or landscape challenges and to identify a course of action that helps conserve their historic resources. The plan will also assist HBCUs as they leverage funding and resources to restore and rehabilitate campus facilities. Second is our recent partnership with the National Museum of African American History and Culture. The purpose of the History and Culture Access Consortium is to strengthen archives and museums, starting with 5 HBCUs. With a $2.2 million contribution, NEH is helping to fund this initiative, which seeks to create lasting benefits to HBCUs by securing their cultural legacy and by greatly enhancing public and scholarly access through an open source digital platform to the rare and valuable cultural holdings in their museums and archives. These holdings enrich our historical and cultural knowledge by conveying many untold stories of the role of African Americans. In addition to documenting the collections of the 5 pilot HBCUs and making collections accessible in digital formats, the project will result in a national traveling exhibition debuting at the National Museum of African American History and Culture and a published catalog. I'd like to also mention A More Perfect Union, NEH's signature initiative in commemoration of the semi-quincentennial of the Declaration of Independence. Anchored in civics education, the initiative pursues the overarching goals of broadening the reach and impact of the humanities, strengthening the nation's humanities infrastructure, commemorating American democracy, and focusing on the needs of U.S. troops, military families, and veterans. The initiative supports diverse topics in American history, as well as projects that examine historical objects, places, traditions, events, and individuals who collectively shaped our states and nation, especially projects that address the contribution of underrepresented communities such as African Americans. As Patrick mentioned, NEH is composed of a number of divisions and offices, each of which has a handful of grant opportunities that might be of interest to you. We'd now like to walk you through these along with several sample projects. So I'll begin with the Division of Preservation and Access. A substantial portion of the nation's cultural heritage and intellectual legacy is held in libraries, archives, and museums. These repositories have a great challenge: to preserve diverse formats of materials that are threatened by factors inherent in their physical structures or by the environments in which they are housed, and to create a level of intellectual control sufficient to enable users to find and use the materials relevant to them. Increasingly, these humanities collections are being used to create the kind of web-based resources that NEH supports, such as encyclopedias, dictionaries, descriptive catalogs, and digital archives. Both the creators and users of these resources also need our support to develop digital tools to enhance access and promote integration of these materials. The Division of Preservation and Access recognizes that good stewardship of cultural resources requires equal attention to both preservation and access. All of the division's programs focus on ensuring the long-term and wide availability of primary resources in the humanities. Let me now offer a few examples of HBCU projects the Division of Preservation and Access has funded in the recent past. Centered at Morehouse College, the Africana Digital Ethnography Project, or ADEPT, brings together faculty and students from member institutions at the Atlanta University Center, the largest consortiums of HBCUs in the United States. The primary work for this 2019 Humanities Collections and Reference Resources Grant is to catalog and annotate a large inventory of born digital recorded sound, moving images, and photographs for posting in an open access repository and educational YouTube channels. The scholars involved in ADEPT have gathered extensive field recordings for a decade, with more to come before the start of the grant period. The primary means of access to the collection will be through the Atlanta University Center Robert Woodruff Library's open access repository. In 2017, the William and Norma B. Harvey Library at Hampton University received a Sustaining Cultural Heritage Collections Award for their project, Wade in the Water, the Preservation Environment Plan for the Peabody Collection. The project included site visits, meetings, and conference calls between preservation consultants and local stakeholders. The consultants helped the library to narrow down the strategic options and to select a realistic and achievable strategy for future improvements for preservation of the collections. And finally, the Delaware University's Archives and Special Collections received a $3,000 grant to support the survey and preservation of the alumni and campus life photography collection. The collection consists of approximately 4,500 photographs dating from the earliest years of the university to the present day. Now we move to the Office of Challenge Programs, which supports long-term projects that strengthen the institutional base of the humanities through a single grant program, Infrastructure and Capacity Building Challenge Grant. Awards to eligible HBCUs of up to $750,000 must be matched with an equal amount in gifts from non-federal third-party sources, so a successful fundraising plan is essential. Capital projects support the design, purchase, construction, restoration, or renovation of buildings or other significant sites that house humanities collections or are used for humanities activities. Digital infrastructure grants support the maintenance, modernization, and sustainability of existing digital scholarly projects and platforms. Applicants may apply to either of the two deadlines, May 18th or September 28th, both in 2021. The HBCU Library Alliance was awarded a challenge grant of $365,000 to be matched one-to-one with $365,000 in non-federal third-party funds. Building capacity for humanities special collections at HBCUs is a 5-year project to enhance the long-term preservation and conservation of collections at member institutions. The HBCU Library Alliance will offer its members' libraries a menu of preservation planning documents, collection surveys, treatment and rehousing services, and educational programs. By helping them to move forward in achieving collection care goals, the Alliance will assist libraries in building capacity for fundraising for special collection initiatives, documenting cultural heritage materials, increasing accessibility of special collection items, and promoting the humanities significance of their collections. And now I'd like to turn things back to my colleague, Patrick.
Thank you, Molly. Next up, we have the Division of Education Programs, which supports grants to strengthen humanities education in elementary, secondary, and higher education institutions. Grants in this division fall into two categories. Some of our awards support professional development. We have 3 summer programs, 2 for K-12 educators and 1 for higher education faculty. Each project brings together a group of humanities educators for up to 4 weeks to study a particular humanities topic in depth. Summer programs are proposed by a host institution. Many programs are hosted by universities, but other humanities institutions, such as historical societies and museums, are also eligible to apply. As you can tell from these few examples, topics for summer programs can vary widely. If you have a topic in mind that you think would benefit educators, I encourage you to apply. Our 2 other programs support institutional projects at colleges and universities. Humanities Connections grants support collaboration between disciplines. The project must include at least 1 humanities field and at least 1 non-humanities field. But we see applications in collaborative areas like medical humanities, and also quite a few to revise general education requirements or to develop programming for first-year students. In one recent example, Xavier University used a grant to host workshops and develop courses for a digital humanities minor with a strong social justice component. The Humanities Initiatives program has several grant lines, including one open only to HBCUs. Humanities Initiatives grants can create or enhance existing programs, resources, or courses. As you can see from the examples, the grant supports a wide range of projects. You might develop a minor, like Grambling State did recently, or support an archival collection, like Howard's recent award, or you might develop programming related to a topic, like Tuskegee's program about preeminent authors with ties to the university. So if you have an idea for a new university initiative or a part of a group on campus that has an idea, then you could draft an application and work with your institution to submit it. And of course, you can speak with an NEH program officer at any time. We're always happy to talk through your ideas. Next up is the Division of Public Programs, which supports projects that engage the broad American public with the humanities. This includes documentaries, museum exhibits, and digital outreach projects. All applications should reach broad audiences beyond the university. On the slide, you can see some grants with upcoming deadlines. Proposals to public programs should be interpretive and do more than just make research accessible to a public audience. For example, if you're providing access to source materials like archival collections or oral histories, the project should provide a framework for an overarching analysis. The division welcomes applications that include multiple formats for interpretation and encourages projects that work collaboratively with humanities scholars from other institutions. Many of you may have seen the documentary Tell Them We Are Rising, which was funded by NEH's Division of Public Programs. The division also recently funded Lincoln University in Pennsylvania for a traveling exhibition about the Great Migration, and Jackson State University for an exhibition about Margaret Walker. And now I'll turn things over to Mary in the Division of Research Programs.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mary Macklem speaking now, and I'm going to talk about a few more grant opportunities and examples before moving on to discuss the application process. The Division of Research Programs supports scholars, individuals, and collaborative teams working on research projects that advance knowledge and understanding of the humanities. Typical activities supported through grants in this division include research in archives and libraries, fieldwork and ethnographic research, and writing and revising of books, monographs, editions, translations, and so on. Awards in the research division range from the Summer Stipend Awards at $6,000, which supports 2 months of research by an individual scholar, to the Scholarly Editions and Scholarly Translations grants, which can award up to $300,000 for up to 3 years of work by a team. We are the only division in the NEH to support individual scholars and offer several individual fellowship programs, including a program specifically designed for faculty and staff at HBCUs. Grant programs can also support scholars working together on a research topic through the Collaborative Research Program and the Scholarly Editions and Scholarly Translations Program. Applicants to these programs may wish to develop a conference, publish an edition or translation of an important humanities text, or bring together scholars from a range of humanities disciplines to work on a multi-authored volume or digital project. On this slide, I have featured 3 recently published books, all of which received support through one of NEH's individual research grants, the Awards for Faculty at HBCU's program. Projects in this program can be at any stage, and the program supports the full range of possible activities, including research, writing, revision, travel to collections, and ethnographic research. The deadline is typically in April, and in fact this year it's coming up next week on April 14th. The first book pictured is by Deanna Koretsky, a professor of English at Spelman College. Professor Koretsky received 6 months of NEH support for her study of British Romantic literature. The second book, A Study of Alabama in the Post-Civil War Era, is by Professor Burtis D. English of Alabama State University. He received 12 months of part-time support. And Professor Stanley Harold of South Carolina State University received 12 months of full-time support for his book on American politics and abolitionism. Next, let's take a look at programs in the Office of Digital Humanities. The Office of Digital Humanities supports a lot of cutting-edge work with a focus on tools and methods that can serve broad audiences in the humanities. If your project aims to develop a new plugin, platform, or piece of software that many different researchers could use, this is the place to go. The Office of Digital Humanities is not the only division to fund digital work. Research, education, preservation and access, and challenge grants all directly fund projects that can be described as digital in a variety of ways. But the Office of Digital Humanities is well known for funding the kind of projects that make other DH projects possible. Typical products include software code, algorithms, digital tools, platforms. You might have heard of Scalar, white papers and reports, workflow documentation, and digital humanities curricula. I want to highlight a recent award from this program to Morehouse College. This project, directed by Aaron Michael Carter-Enyi, is a study, computationally, of how composers develop musical themes. He and his collaborators, including music theorists, musicologists, a mathematician, and a computer scientist, are creating an improved open source method for visualizing patterns and themes in music across several genres. And one really nice facet of this project is that the project team will be developing course modules for undergraduate students at several Georgia universities, including Morehouse, Spelman, Emory University, Georgia State University, and the University of Georgia. Feel free to check out the project website if you're interested. And lastly, as Patrick mentioned earlier in the presentation, the Office of Federal-State Partnership is the liaison between the NEH and the nonprofit network of state and jurisdictional humanities councils. There are 56 nonprofit organizations in this network representing all 50 states and the 6 jurisdictions. State and jurisdictional humanities councils receive direct funding from NEH to support their work. Approximately 40% of NEH's annual appropriation funds the general operating support grants for each local council. The councils are the public humanities in action. Councils offer a wide array of grants and thought-provoking programming that make humanities ideas accessible to general public audiences, foster discussion, promote civic engagement, preserve cultural heritage, connect scholars and the public, and more. They have grant programs and subaward NEH and other funds to cultural and educational institutions. The work they do is tailored to the resources, demographics, interests, and concerns of the state or jurisdiction they serve. We've included as a handout a list of contact information for each local council, and we urge you to reach out and become involved in the work of your local council. The link provided in the chat will also take you to a list of local councils. Here are 2 examples of projects from the state councils, which involve HBCUs. The first example is from the Georgia Humanities Council, which awarded a grant for Planet Deep South ATL 2020, Digital Humanities, Speculative Cultural Production, and Africanisms in the American and Global South. The program took place in February 2020 on the campus of Atlanta University Center and brought together professors and students from Morehouse, Spelman, and Morris Brown Colleges and Clark Atlanta University. The keynote speaker was Itasha Womack, a critically acclaimed author, filmmaker, dancer, independent scholar, and the author of Afrofuturism, The World of Black Sci-Fi and Fantasy Culture. The event highlighted the significance of humanities disciplines and the relationship to technology and futurism. It also demonstrated the interdisciplinary nature of humanities research and how content can be delivered via various modalities. The second example is from the West Virginia Humanities Council. For the past 4 years, this council has sponsored the annual Carter G. Woodson Lyceum Teachers Institute at Marshall University, which brings K-12 teachers and university faculty together for a week of study. The Institute makes possible a direct exchange of ideas between HBCU-affiliated instructors and West Virginia educators across an array of humanities disciplines, with the goal of integrating Black history and culture more fully in West Virginia classrooms. Though the Institute is not housed at an HBCU, involvement of HBCU-affiliated guest faculty in the Institute is central to its mission and spirit. The 2020 Carter G. Woodson Lyceum was led by presenters and instructors from HBCUs, Howard University, Hampton University, Tuskegee University, and the state's 2 HBCUs, West Virginia State University and Bluefield State College. The Lyceum is named in honor of Carter G. Woodson, one of the leading educators of the 20th century and a resident of West Virginia. So now that Patrick, Molly, and myself have given an overview of grant funding opportunities, along with some project examples, let's take a look at the application process. You may be wondering who is eligible to apply for an NEH grant. Most of our grant applicants are US-based nonprofit institutions like libraries, museums, or universities. They must have 501c3 status. As I mentioned previously, a few programs are designed for individuals, supporting scholars doing research and writing. That can include independent scholars, as well as college or university faculty. Applicants must be citizens or resident in the United States for at least 3 years before the deadline. Students are not eligible. The best source for information about the endowment's work is our website at NEH.gov. It has all of our grant programs, all of our deadlines, and a wealth of other information, including instructions on how to apply for a grant. You can see the link there at the top of the page. At the bottom of the page, you'll find an online database of all of our previous grants. Once you click on the link for grants, you will see this page. Here, you will be able to search all grant programs, view awards made, and find additional information for first-time applicants as well as other resources. There is also a link here to sign up if you are potentially interested in serving as a peer reviewer for NEH. Once you identify the grant program you are interested in, you can click on a link for that program. For every grant program, there is a program page. Each program page includes the same kind of information, although the actual information varies from program to program. It will tell you the application deadline, the funding statistics for that program in recent years, and who to contact if you have questions. The most important document on the program page is the Notice of Funding Opportunity, also known as the guidelines. These guidelines can be long and a bit bureaucratic, but grant applicants should spend some time reading them. They will tell you who can and who cannot apply for a grant, what activities grant funds can and cannot support, what an application should include, and how applications will be evaluated. Also on this page is a link to recently funded projects so that you can get a sense of the kinds of things a program can support. There's also a link to sample applications, previously successful applications that you can use as an example for a way a proposal can be written. Applications for NEH grants, like many federal grants, are submitted through a web portal called grants.gov. You or your institution, depending on the type of grant for which you are applying, will need to register with grants.gov. We generally advise you to do this at least 4 to 6 weeks prior to applying. Grants.gov is a fairly straightforward system, but it is a good idea to spend some time getting familiar with it before you submit your application. We strongly urge that you register with Grants.gov and apply early, because Grants.gov can be congested and overwhelmed in the last 5 minutes before a deadline. Now that we've looked at the NEH website and where to find information for all of our grants, let's look at how your application will be assessed. As Patrick mentioned earlier in the presentation, every NEH grant application goes through a process of peer review. That means that each application is read by a committee of outside experts recruited by NEH staff. Reviewers represent different expertise in the humanities as appropriate to each NEH program. For example, humanities librarians will help to evaluate grants for libraries. Humanities educators will help to evaluate grants in the area of education, and so on. For our 2 grant programs specific to HBCUs, scholars and educators at HBCUs will help to evaluate. These reviewers evaluate the applications based on carefully defined criteria. They assign a rating and write comments. NEH staff takes the committee recommendations to the National Council on the Humanities, a board of 26 humanities professionals appointed by the President and confirmed by the Senate. The chairman of the NEH takes all these recommendations into account when making grant decisions. All this means that your application is being evaluated by people like you, people who know the humanities and who understand the work. You should know that the reviewers take the process seriously. So what can you do to prepare a solid application? We have several suggestions on a handout, including these. And here are a variety of things to lay a good foundation for a successful grant application. The first tip is to begin early, because the process can be lengthy. Also, you may not get a grant the first time you apply, so it's good to apply early and to try again if you're not successful the first time. Next, I would look at the Notice of Funding Opportunity. As I mentioned, these include complete instructions on how to apply and other information. They vary a bit from program to program, so make sure you're using the ones for the program to which you are applying. Importantly, they also contain the review criteria, which you should closely consider and address as you write your application. Your audience for the proposal is humanists like yourself, and you will want to make the case for your project for this audience. Don't forget to pay attention to details such as proofreading and citations, since you don't want reviewers to be distracted by errors. And early on in the process, as we hope to convey, please talk to program officers, because that's what we're here for. We're here to discuss project ideas, help you find the right grant program, and so on. And in many programs, staff will also read draft proposals. Finally, before we conclude today, we wanted to mention some other opportunities for connecting with NEH. NEH has offered a student internship program in the past. In fact, intern Bria Page, a Spelman graduate and currently a student at Rutgers, is a member of the NEH HBCU working group and helped with these slides. Thank you, Bria. For upcoming job opportunities, please visit the NEH website frequently for updates. Opportunities will be listed on USA Jobs, the federal government website for job postings. We also invite you to volunteer to be considered to serve as a peer reviewer, as we've mentioned in a previous slide. And here is the link is in the chat, once again, if you can like to do that to signal your interest. You can also follow NEH on social media at NEH.gov. And we also publish a magazine, Humanities Magazine, with feature articles on NEH-supported projects and other humanities topics. You can access the magazine digitally on our website or sign up for email updates. Don't forget to find out what's taking place through your state or jurisdictional humanities council and become involved in their work in the humanities. Lastly, feel free to attend our other upcoming virtual workshops between now and June 3rd. Workshops will be on a variety of topics, including digital humanities, archives and libraries, and grants for individual scholars. That brings our presentation to a conclusion. Today, we've provided an overview of NEH grant opportunities, as well as where to find more information and other topics. And we hope the information has been helpful, that you'll feel encouraged to apply, and that you will reach out to us for more information. Thanks very much for coming. And so with that, does anyone have any questions for any of us?
If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A and I will ask our panelists. Thank you, Patrick, Molly, and Mary, for a wonderful presentation today. Our first question, if I asked a program officer for help on my application, will I be penalized during the evaluation process?
Well, this is Patrick Fleming speaking. No, absolutely, you would not be penalized for asking a program officer. Feedback on a draft is completely separate from the review process. So the act of asking is not something that reviewers would know or that would affect your application in any way. Hopefully, you would get feedback that would help you write and improve the application, but it certainly would not adversely affect your chances.
What are the most common mistakes people make on their applications?
Hi, this is Mary. I'm happy to try to answer that one. Some of the common things that we see is just not having a complete application, and maybe you're missing an attachment, and then unfortunately the application is ineligible and cannot go through review. Another thing are proofreading errors that really can be distracting to reviewers, and if you can save a little time to proofread and share your proposal broadly with your friends or colleagues, even family members, that can be helpful to catch some of those things, and also to make sure that the language of the proposal is clear and understandable to a broader audience. So those are two things that come to my mind. It might be that Patrick or Molly have some additional thoughts.
Yeah, thanks, Mary. I think you covered most of what was on my mind, especially about avoiding jargon, the language that one uses in the application, that it needs to be comprehensive and be descriptive while avoiding incredibly specialized language that only a few people would understand. The other thing I would mention too, and this is especially important for grants that require collaboration, is that collaboration often takes a lot of pre-planning. So even before the grant is submitted, there's a sense in which the amount of sort of networking and letters of commitment and sort of outlines of what the sort of memorandum of understanding, whatever they may be, to sort of outline how the partnerships are going to work, to sort of do all of that legwork before the grant application actually goes in. And then I would just say, to reiterate, Patrick's initial response, that I think to not taking advantage of the draft, when one can submit a draft, doing so is of great value. So I would say that that's a mistake people sort of make, is that they don't take advantage of that, and the program officers can really help early before the actual application is submitted. So thanks.
I would certainly second what Mary and Molly have said, and I would say the most common feedback I give on draft is to be sort of more precise and more specific in language. So you want to, of course, write for clearly for a general audience. And if you're saying something like you'll have a workshop in support of the grant, we'll want to know, or reviewers will want to know, what does that mean? How many people are coming? Who would be involved? To the extent that you can mention, specific text, specific topics, specific courses that might be enhanced, a specific audience that might come to your museum exhibit, specific works that might be part of that. Those kind of details matter, and they convey to reviewers that this is a project that we want to fund.
All right, someone has asked, are HBCUs encouraged to apply for only these grants or other grants as well?
Other grants as well, absolutely. HBCUs are open to any of the grants for colleges and universities. A museum or an archive at HBCU might be eligible for other ones, but yeah, certainly encouraged to apply for all of them.
Great. We've had a couple of people ask about where they can get a copy of this presentation afterward. This presentation and all other presentations that are a part of this grant workshop series will be posted online at NEH.gov/grants/virtual workshops. I believe it is one of the links posted in the Yes, it's the first link posted in the Q&A section. And I would also like to take this chance to encourage folks, if there's another one of our future webinars that applies to you, if you work in an on-campus library or an on-campus museum, or you're interested in some of our awards for individual scholars, we do encourage you to come to those grant workshops as well. Someone has asked, can I apply for multiple grants at once? For example, both a fellowship and an awards for faculty.
Thank you. This is Mary again. I'm happy to answer that question. Thank you for asking it. And the answer for that specific question is you would need to choose between the fellowships or the awards for faculty at HBCU's program. So you have to choose one of those. The deadline is the same for those programs this year. It's April 14th. But for many of our other programs, including some of our individual grant programs, you can apply concurrently. So for example, you could choose between either fellowships or the awards for faculty in April, but you could also then go on later to apply for a summer stipends award, which is a shorter duration, or you could also look into the Public Scholars program and apply to that. And there are several others, individual awards. So I would suggest that you look at the notice of funding opportunity for those other programs, because we will provide information on to which programs you can apply concurrently and those to which you may not apply concurrently. Thank you for the question.
All right, someone has asked, can a non-HBCU institution apply for NEH funds to support residential fellowships for HBCU scholars?
That's a good question, and I was just processing the question and trying to think about that. Ellen, can you say it one more time?
Absolutely. Can a non-HBCU institution apply for NEH money to support residential fellowships for HBCU scholars?
So thank you. So my initial thinking is that I don't think of a program that we currently offer at NEH where that would be possible. We do have a program for independent research centers. It's called Independent Research Centers through the Division of Research, and we do support centers such as the Newberry Library in Chicago, or centers abroad who have fellowship programs and can support scholars with NEH funds. But I don't believe we have other opportunities like that right now that would fit the exact thing you're describing, but someone else chime in if I'm just not recalling something.
Hi,
go ahead, Molly.
Sorry. I just wanted to say that I think, Mary, I would say generally that is exactly right, what Mary said. The only thing I would add is that there are a number of collaborations between university libraries or independent libraries and HBCU libraries and archives within the Division of Preservation and Access. So definitely collaboration, but not an instance in which, not the specific instance outlined in the question, but I just wanted to emphasize that partnerships and collaborations are certainly encouraged in a number of programs in preservation and access. So I'll turn it over to Patrick. Thanks.
I was going to say just the same thing that Molly said, that while I couldn't think of a particular program for residential fellowships, there are many programs that encourage partnerships between HBCUs and non-HBCUs.
Wonderful. I think this is a question about challenge grants. If an HBCU does not have matching funds, are there thoughts on how to assist them in applying?
So that's a great question, and we have really fabulous program officers in the Office of Challenge, and so I would really encourage the HBCU to be in touch. Challenge@neh.org is the best way to reach them, to think creatively about fundraising. So the assumption is not that the university itself or the college itself has those funds, but rather that they can fundraise for them. And the idea here is that you submit the challenge application with a strong outline for those fundraising plans, one that the panelists agree is feasible and seems realistic. And then if you're fortunate enough to be awarded the grant, then you're all of a sudden your fundraising gets a real sort of gets a little leverage because it's an NEH supported project now. So that's sort of some of the idea behind the challenge grants. So again, just to recap, the assumption is not that the HBCU itself has the money to meet the challenge, to meet the grant amount, but rather that it has the capacity or is building the capacity to fundraise for that. So.
I would add as well that the challenge grants are sort of a unique set of grants at the NEH. The majority of our grants do not require any matching funds from applicants.
Thank you both. Just wanted to remind everyone that all of the handouts mentioned are available at the link that Patrick very helpfully provided in the Q&A. And if you have any questions that aren't covered by those handouts and weren't covered on the presentation today, you can reach out to us at congressional@neh.gov, and we will be happy to put you in touch with the appropriate division who can help you answer your question. All right, and then unless we have any additional questions, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope that this virtual workshop was helpful to you, and we really do hope that you will reach out to us if you are considering applying for a grant so that our program officers can review your application, answer questions, and help you in any way that we can.